you know. It's called Reading Beyond Boundaries. It's part of a series of events that run throughout the whole festival called Border Crossings, where we're thinking about that term border crossings in every possible sense. So sometimes that means political borders, borders between countries, borders between different identities, classes, genders, sexualities. In this case, what we're looking at is how literary influence crosses borders. Because every writer is influenced by every writer that they've ever read, and no one becomes a writer without reading a great deal. So every writer, it's a kind of a standard question at literary events for a writer to talk about their influences, the people who have influenced their work. So what we've done is, in partnership with the British Council, who I'd like to thank for their support, we've commissioned 3 writers to do pieces which range in form from sort of more essay-type pieces to poetry, which reflect on a particular writer who's been an influence on them. What I'll do is I'll introduce everyone at the beginning so we can keep things flowing pretty smoothly. So first we're going to hear from Arielle John, who is the writer that she's going to be discussing or sharing the influence of is Pablo Neruda, the Chilean poet. Next we're going to hear from Barbara Lala, who is going to tell us how her most recent novel, Grounds for Tenure, was influenced by her lifelong obsession with Chaucer, Geoffrey Chaucer, the Middle English author. Finally, we're going to hear from Shivani Ramlochan, who told me years ago that Federico Garcia Lorca was the first poet she read that made her understand what poetry was, and she's going to tell us a bit about that experience. After them, we've got a guest reader of sorts, Anu Lakan, who has recently published the chapbook Letters to K. K in the title is Franz Kafka, or is it? Maybe it's not entirely clear if the K that the letters are addressed to is a historical Kafka or a character who's been invented by the author. So we're going to hear readings from, we're going to hear the commissioned pieces by those 3 writers, then a selection from Anu's Letters from K, and then, assuming we have any time left, we're going to have a bit of a conversation and there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So let's welcome the writers and let's get straight into it.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Oh, well, midday. Afternoon, it's afternoon. Perfect, thank you. All right, so I'll jump straight into it. I have a series of poems. They all kind of flow into each other, so I will read it as such. I failed Form 6 Spanish, the lowest grade in the literature section. Each of the after-lunch lulls of in-class siestas finally paying off, where I really thought I could spark notes my way through Gabriel Garcia Marquez's No One Writes to the Colonel. Because what is war to a grande girl autocorrected by a tongue school, finding out her womanness in the world? 2 Sundays before, when the hard-hat worksite manager tells her to call her father if she really had questions about the cell tower being mounted behind her house without approval. Call the same father who sprouts a fistful of tumors grenading beneath his skull on threat of blindness 5 years later. And Garcia's characters do not have names. And I learned that by 17, that being a woman is also not having a name in many people's books. My father's tumor condition is also so rare that it has no name in the diagnosis. The cell tower is still there. We lose the house on account of my father's medical bills. I fail Form 6 Spanish because I fall asleep, because Garcia's work does not meet me in this way of being a woman. He is writing on corruption and cockfights and all the other causes of death. I am too busy trying to find ways of living here, where I do not have enough of a name to mark my own gravestone with. What we remember of the dead is perhaps all that they live for. We get put here to put others on their course. And in that vein, my uncle told me that to read a poem out loud, I am free to make all the mistakes I need because they are mine. and all of me is worth my owning, mistakes too. He bought me my first collection of Neruda's work, and everything after that is the forgiveness I keep giving to myself. My friend of a decade who calls my parents on their birthday, who drops me back home at the wayward hours with the slur of the fet slugged on my tongue and the reckless jokes then flung from it. The kind of friend who messages me before a performance and after and sometimes during. The friend that brings me gluten-free, dairy-free dark chocolate. That is friend to have. And I jump on a plane and move to London and did not text her to say that I was leaving. I mean, she didn't know that I was flying out that month, but 2 days later, on my cousin's couch in Peckham, is a series of messages of the cuss-out variety, without any kind of obscene language because she still wouldn't talk to me like that. Says that she admires how well I detach from people. Say that is barely a human way to live. Say how I remind her of her ex. And Neruda's book is the only one I have traveled with to a country dominated by gray and the work of being alone. My father is also upset with me because he did not get to see me off at the airport, as is family custom. This time, I hear plain big woman and let the man I just secretly signed marriage papers for take me to the departure gate through which even our union does not make it to the other side. Neruda is coaching me through the days of crying headaches, a chilly end of summer, and low cash. The book is called Extravagaria, translating to the action of wandering about without control. And here in the West African section, southeast of the city, I think about losing my address to my momentum, the freedom of swimming past every post of settle and stay. Neruda says, "Goodbye, friends who loved me. I go singing across seas, and I go back to breathe my roots. My city is geography. The street is called I go, the number not to return." Here I learned that Neruda's friends used to love him, but it becomes a task over time. Someone shifting in and out of space so fast, nothing is there to hold affection in place. It is as though Neruda's heart doesn't even stay inside his body, full of its own dreaming, its own will to give and grow, and maybe under some other wind somewhere away. For everything that I used to pack in my suitcase, for everything that I refuse to pack in my suitcase, there is always my heart and that blue book, and beneath my blouse a collection of people who have given in love, in laughter, in love make, in lessons, in blessings. I stay wanting to go again, and if I don't come back, it have WhatsApp and IG and email for that. This final poem comes with a bit of a trigger warning for rape and sexual violence. The man who I find in a new country, who I have new hopes of marrying after never having returned to the man before him, visits my bedroom for the first time, sees Neruda's collection on the wooden desk next to the other well-worn things, like my green tea-stained coffee mug, a half-burnt lavender candle, the left chamber of my heart. He picks it up and asks, "You know he was an abuser, right?" I walk over and wonder which man could he possibly be talking about. Some drunk character in the book probably, or somebody from an earlier conversation we had. But nah, not Neruda. Not the only book I hauled over all that water, all them continents, all those seasons and women's marches and therapy sessions, all them interventions with students I mentor, all them chats with survivors, all that self-talk in the mirror. But in a 40-year-old memoir, Neruda talks about his maid, quote, "One morning, I decided to go for it all, grabbed her forcibly by the wrist, and looked her in the face. There was no language I could speak to her. No había idioma alguno en que pudiera hablarle. She allowed herself to be led by me, unsmiling, and soon was naked upon my bed. The encounter was like that of a man and a statue. She kept her eyes open throughout, unmoved. She was right to have contempt for me. End quote. There is no language I could speak back to my friend. No había idioma alguno en que pudiera hablarle. And there is one last line where he says, no se repetió la experiencia, the experience was not repeated. And in this confession of fault, it is both the sunken ocean of my stomach, drained of everything that makes it, and a meditation of all my own mistakes. I become yet another statue, woman without name, glaring at the book cover. And even there, Neruda knows how we are right for having contempt for him, his dead self, and all the other men who are not, who are still here with us, looking us in the face and deciding on how much of nothing we must be. Thank you.